This is André Hébert in Montreal. I don't suppose I'll ever forget springtime 1956. That year, on glorious March 21st, it was my privilege to flick on a switch and fill the unsuspecting airwaves in northern Germany with these words: "This is CAE, Canadian Army, Europe, Radio."
In 1953, the 1st Canadian Army troops moved into the Westphalian towns of Werl, Soest, and Hamer. Right in the middle of the garrison area was Werl, the home of the RCE Engineers and the Royal 22nd Regiment. And listeners will remember 4 Field Squadron located in Fort Victoria, which also happened to be the home of radio station CAE. CAE was a small station that boasted an international complement of staff members, comprising English and French programmers, German technicians, and Belgian weather reporters. Truly a melting pot of broadcast personnel.
At 87.8 on the FM dial, this is Canadian Forces Radio, CAE.
Howdy neighbor, howdy, get out and come right in. We'll make a bowl of gravy to soak your biscuits in. Buy a pot of coffee and bake a big fat hen. Cooking up, feeling fine, so let the fun begin.
Norma Jean kicking the show off with Howdy Neighbor Howdy, and howdy there, welcome to Friday's Best of the West. Just a little reminder about now, if you have a favorite country and western artist you'd like to hear, drop me a line to Ramblin' Roy Smith, Radio CAE, CFPO 5050. This is Red Simpson to entertain, from his LP Truck Driving Fool, Diesel Smoke, Dangerous Curves.
I'm a-driving this truck on a mountain road. I got a hot rod rig and I'm a-flying low. My eyes are filled with diesel smoke.
First of all, I would like to talk with Jack Crane, who is now Supervisor of Programs for the Northern and Armed Forces Radio Service. Jack, you've been a manager of CAE. Maybe you can tell us something about your experiences while over there and some of its operations.
The station is run by the Canadian Army for the 4th Canadian Infantry Brigade Group in Germany, and is managed by 2 men on loan from the CBC. At that time it was myself and André Hébert, who's now with the French network as a television announcer. It's now, of course, Alan Brown and Don McGibbon, 2 other CBC people who replaced us. The technicians are German civilians, and as is the secretary, and the program work is all done by Canadian soldiers.
You are tuned to the Canadian Army's European radio station with studios and transmitter located at Fort Victoria in Werl, Germany.
And as the old theme rolls in, it's time once again for another edition of Club 5050. Speaking your host, your Jack of the Wax, Guardsman Ray Trevy of the 1st Canadian Guards.
Bonjour madame, et j'espère que vous allez bien aujourd'hui. I'm Carol Bourgeois and I welcome you to today's edition.
This is Private Rick Odd speaking on behalf of all of us at the Brigade Radio Station and wishing you a very pleasant good night.
Dangerous curve.
My name is Larry Harding, and I think I was one of the fortunate ones. But then again, I think all of us who had a chance to work with the Canadian forces in Europe were fortunate ones. I worked as an announcer-operator at Radio CAE in Werl from June of 1969 to November of 1970, along with Rob Bull, Richard Cusson, John Hanlon and Mal Jones. We were all full of enthusiasm and we wanted to make CAE the best Canadian radio station anywhere. And once in a while, we were the best Canadian radio station going.
My name is Rob Bull. I've been a newsman for 24 years, and in 1969 I was one of the first 5 civilian announcer-operators hired for Radio CAE in Werl, near Dortmund in north-central Germany. It was a learning experience. There weren't any news services to help prepare the newscast the way the Army wanted. We taped shortwave, anybody's shortwave, and tried to put a reasonable package together with our own local reports. There was a Telefunken shortwave receiver bigger than a phone booth, with dials and wheels that could get the CBC's Northern Service news, among other things. I never did figure out how to work it. I went for lunch one Saturday thinking a German technician would tape a frequency and replay a newscast from the CBC at 1 o'clock. I thought I spoke German. He thought he spoke English. What he taped and replayed was an English newscast from Radio Moscow. The Army was not amused.
Dangerous curve.
Red Simpson there with the truck driving number, Diesel Smoke, Dangerous Curves. This is Canadian Forces Radio, CAE.
Hello, my friends. My name is Cameron McKay. This is the Theme Time Show from Canadian Military. Man behind the controls tonight is Louis Roos.
June the 25th, 1966. The place was the Grugehalle in Essen, West Germany. The show was a beat festival with such stars as Peter and Gordon, the Rebel Rousers, the Rattles from West Germany, and last but not least, the famed Beatles. My name is Corporal Cammy McKay. That night I was on duty in Essen for Radio CAE, and here's what I come up with.
Our CAE microphone is moving in to talk to one of the more famed groups of the musical world, known, of course, as the Beatles. Moving in now in front of Ringo. Ringo, they say shaking hands is an old European custom. May I shake hands with you, sir?
Yeah. How are you? All right.
I'm from Radio Canadian Army Europe.
Oh,
Ringo.
Canadian Army.
Yes. Sitting back there, do you enjoy these news conferences?
Well, this one wasn't a very good one, you know.
Oh, I noticed the questions some of the people asked you were rather foolish.
Yeah. I don't know why, you know. I mean, they're wasting their time as much as ours, you know.
That's true.
Like someone says, what time is it? You know, what's that got to do with it?
That's rather foolish.
This is Canadian Forces Radio, CAE in Werl, Germany.
Je suis pompiste dans un patelin entre Senlis et Paris. Autrefois soir et matin, c'était le paradis. J'aimais surtout le dimanche et ses encombrements. Je mettais ma chemise blanche, ma casquette et mes gants.
Radio CAE, der Sender der kanadischen Truppen in Europa, begann heute Morgen sein Programm zum 5230. Mal. Am 21. März 1956 erklang zum ersten Mal dieser Morgengruß in englischer und französischer Sprache. Gesprochen in einem kleinen Sendestudio zu Füßen eines 100 Meter hohen Sendemastes, mitten im Werler Stadtwald im Kreis Soest, fast genau im geografischen Zentrum Westfalens. 5230 Sendetage dieses kanadischen Truppensenders haben nicht nur die in den Kreisen Iserlohn und Soest lebenden Kanadier zu treuen Hörern des temperamentvollen und unkonventionellen Programms von Radio CAE gemacht. Auch viele Deutsche, vor allem junge Leute, können sich schlecht einen Tag ohne Musik von Radio CAE denken. Aber sie müssen sich langsam an diese Vorstellung gewöhnen, denn in genau 112 Tagen sendet dieser UKW-Sender auf der Haar bei Werl sein Programm zum letzten Mal.
Französisch also. Wenn man Fort Victoria mit dem Wagen verlässt, so lässt dieses Schild wissen, begibt man sich in den gefährlichsten Teil dieser Welt. Den Kontakt zu dieser Welt aber nicht zu verlieren, darum bemüht sich Radio CAE.
And that's all the time we have for this, the Friday edition of the Music Box. Weekend coming up, we're very glad.
Mit 12 Mitarbeitern wird hier täglich Unmögliches möglich gemacht.
By Louis Roos. You know them very well. This is their most recent hit, the Jackson 5 and I Want You Back.
Große Funkhäuser lassen sich Nachrichtensendungen etwas kosten. Bei Radio CAE in Werl geht das billiger. Über Kurzwelle empfängt man die Nachrichtensendungen von Radio Kanada, nimmt sie auf Tonband auf, ergänzt die Meldungen durch eigene Nachrichten und kommt auf diese Weise billig und schnell zu einem eigenen Nachrichtendienst, 3-mal täglich. Kaffeepause ist der Titel einer morgendlichen Plauderei zwischen Karen Lee, der Frau eines kanadischen Captains, und Richard Cousson. Tipps für den Möbelkauf zum Beispiel, die Preise in den Kaufhäusern, Stoff gibt es immer genug. Präsentiert wird er zwanglos.
It's by the Living Strings, it's called
Forget the Money.
Wie hat es mit der Zusammenarbeit zwischen den deutschen Technikern und Ihnen in den letzten Jahren geklappt? So fragte ich Barclay Macmillan, den Chef von Radio CAE.
Eine so kleine Station, man muss wirklich eine Mannschaft, ein Team haben. Und das, glaube ich, haben wir hier in Radio CAE.
Well, that's Buck Owens and the Buckaroos coming around the best of the West instrumentally this afternoon at 32 minutes past the 11th hour with the Orange Blossom Special.
Als man hier am 21. März 1956 genau um 17 Uhr in die Luft ging, wusste man noch nicht, wie lange das werden würde mit einem kanadischen Sender mitten in Deutschland. Nun weiß man das. Am 18. Oktober wird die letzte Sendung sein. Die kanadischen Regimenter werden verlegt. Radio CAE wollte Brücke sein, auch zwischen Sieger und Besiegten. Das ist im Werler Stadtwald gelungen. Keiner verlässt, wenn am 18. Oktober dieses Jahres das rote Licht an den Mikrofonen ausgeht, gerne seinen Platz.
At 87.8 on the FM dial, you're listening to Canadian Forces Radio CAE.
This is an invitation to all our listeners. You, dear friends, are invited to join us in your homes, barracks, or wherever you may be Sunday night for CAE's final broadcast. The show begins at 8 o'clock and goes right through to midnight when the station signs off the air for the last time. The program will feature a pleasant blend of easy listening, country, and pop music. On the show will be voices from the past who will relive some of the station's more interesting moments. BFBS joins the show for a while, broadcasting simultaneously over CAE and their station in Cologne. Remember, Radio CAE's final program, a 4-hour special, 8 p.m. to midnight this Sunday. Tune us in.
This is Radio CAE,
serving Canadian Forces personnel and their families.
The foregoing was a special news report which came to you live and direct through the facilities of the CBC's shortwave transmitting facilities in Montreal.
The date, March 21st, 1956. A new radio station appears on the FM band.
Good morning, everyone. The Canadian Army's radio station with studios and transmitter at Werl in Westphalia is about to begin another day of programs for soldiers of the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade Group and their dependents. The station operates on a power output of 250 watts, broadcasting on a frequency of 96.9 megacycles using frequency modulation. The time now is exactly 1 minute after 6:30.
And so the birth of Radio Canadian Army Europe, CAE, a radio station to serve Canadian Forces personnel and their dependents stationed here in Westphalia, Germany. Good evening, I'm Mal Jones and I'm your host for the next 3 hours and 58 minutes. That's how long Radio CAE has left before it ceases to exist. When former Defense Minister Léo Cadieux announced last autumn that the brigade here in northern Germany would be phased out, it spelled the end of our little station after 14 years, 6 months and 27 days of providing news and entertainment to Canadians here. From now until we sign off the air at 12 midnight tonight, we're going to set the clock back right to the very beginning and relive some of the highlights of this station. And we're going to talk to some of the people who, at some time or another, were part of Radio CAE. Also, BFBS Cologne will be joining us for a simultaneous broadcast later in the evening. So as our program director put it very aptly, if we gotta go, we're going out in style. Please join us. Radio CAE's station manager from 1964 to 1967 was Mr. Hans Knov. Mr. Knov is in Werl tonight to attend the closeout of CAE, and naturally he has more than a few fond memories of our station as he chats with current manager Barclay Macmillan.
Hans, you were at CAE for 3 years, 64 to 67.
64, 67, 2 good vintage years, yes.
They were. Can you remember any special developments?
I'm very sad that CAE has to go, but that's life. It has to be. Changing circumstances. There's one thing that I might mention in connection with CAE, but with this story about a chap over in England who was watching his TV and suddenly picked up on the screen an image he thought he could identify as a North American program. A little surprised, it was good enough that he could take a photo of it, and he did. And he sent that over to somebody, I forget whom or what, in the United States. He got confirmation back that indeed it was an American station, but a station that had been on the air for the last time a year and a half before. Now, maybe somewhere Radio CAE will eternally go on if we could only pick up the signal and hear it again.
Well, Hans, we'll both try to be there.
Amen.
We just managed to contact Don McGibbon, who's the program director of the Canadian Forces Network in Lahr. Don, incidentally, was associated with Radio CAE from 1957 to 1962. And Don, if you're on the program, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, John Hanlon and Barclay Macmillan, for inviting me in to share some of the final hours of Radio CAE. During the time that I was at CAE, there were dozens of examples of exciting and interesting and unusual experiences, and quite a lot of comic experiences too. I think that my favorite description of Radio CAE happens to be my own. In some ways, CAE is like a CBC radio station. In other ways, it was like a privately owned commercial radio station. But in most ways, it was like no other radio station in the world. Today's the last day from a great little station.
Thank you for those kind words, Don McGibbon, Program Director of the Canadian Forces Network in Lahr.
Radio CAE's last broadcast, coming to you live from Fort Victoria in Werl, West Germany.
'Cause he gets up in the morning and he goes to work at 9 and he comes back home at 5:30, gets the same train every time. 'Cause his world is built on punctuality, it never fails. And he's all so good, and he's all so fine, and he's all so healthy in his body and his mind. He's a well-respected man about town, doing the best things so conservatively.
Although CAE broadcasts with a power output of only 250 watts on the FM band, we've a vastly larger potential audience than any comparable station in Canada would have. We're right on the edge of the Ruhr industrial area, and over 1.5 million people live within reach of our signal. And one of the very gratifying things about working at Radio CAE is the enormous response of the Germans. We estimate that over 100,000 Germans listen regularly, every day. For the most part, they're young, early teens to early 30s, and they enjoy the music we play on shows like Pops on Parade.
This is Canadian Forces Radio, CAE in Werl, Germany. Stay tuned for Pops on Parade.
Yes, indeed. Time once again for Pops on Parade, our Monday edition for today, Monday, the 27th of July. First show of a brand...
Quite a few of them listen to non-music programs too. Senior high schoolers and university students who listen to the station to keep their ears tuned to spoken English and French.
Good evening, everybody. Here's what's on tonight in the Brigade area. As of tomorrow, Thursday the 23rd of July, and every Thursday thereafter, all Bank of Montreal branches will be open from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. rather than on Wednesdays at these times. The Werl and Hamer branches will close on the 25th of September. À partir du jeudi le 23 juillet, les succursales de la Banque de Montréal opéreront tous les jeudis après-midi de 16h30 à 17h30. Les succursales de Werl et Hamer cesseront ses activités à partir du 25 septembre 1970. Now here are the movies to be shown in the local brigade cinemas this evening. The Fort York Cinema features Julie Andrews in Thoroughly Modern Millie. One performance only, 7:30 p.m. At Fort Chambly, it's If, a restricted film starring David Wood, beginning at 6 and 8:30 p.m. The Looking Glass War with Christopher Jones in the leading part will be shown at Fort St. Louis, showtime 7:30 p.m. The Fort Prince of Wales Cinema presents Peter Graves in Mission Impossible vs. the Mob, 2 showings at 6 and 8:30 p.m. And finally at Lipstadt you may see Clint Eastwood in the restricted film Coogan's Bluff, 1 performance only, 7:45 p.m.
You're listening to the final radio broadcast from Radio CAE, located in Fort Victoria, just outside of the reasonably sized town of Werl, West Germany. Time, 6 minutes before 10 o'clock in the evening, coming up to 2 hours and 6 minutes before we say farewell for the last time from Radio CAE. Towards the beginning of this program, you heard our first station manager, Jack Crane, talk about the first staff of Radio CAE. Here's CAE's last station manager, Barclay McMillan, to talk about CAE's last staff.
Just over a year ago, the announcers at CAE were soldiers. Now all but one are civilians, 5 fellows just out of university. The maintenance technician is a Canadian Signal Corps sergeant, and the 4 control room operators are German civilians. The staff is rounded out by a full-time woman's commentator, wife of a Canadian captain, and a German secretary who has just followed in the steps of most of her predecessors by marrying a Canadian. Then there's Frau Haupthoff, technically our cleaner, but in reality far more than that. She's the station mother, Mutti, who keeps the coffee pot boiling. I mention Mutti because her role in the station is typical of the whole relationship between staff members. We're not just a broadcasting organization, we're a family. And this has been true ever since Jack Crane put CAE on the air almost 15 years ago. And it's because of this family feeling which cuts across the barriers which sometimes exist between military and civilian and between German and Canadian that we've been able to do so much. You know, one of the angles which the German media always play up when they do a feature on CAE is what seems to them, at any rate, the phenomenal output from such a small staff. Westdeutsches Fernsehen, in a color feature a couple of months ago, unwittingly gave us a motto which has helped keep morale and production high during the last few months. They said, "Here daily with a staff of 12, the impossible is made possible."
And that's it. A capsule history of Radio CAE. It is hard to believe, but the time is nearly at hand, the time when we sign off the air permanently. Throughout this evening's program, we've tried to keep away from the nostalgia and tears, and we don't intend to let up now. All we'll say, and this goes for everyone on our staff, we're going to miss you. It's been fun all these years, and I hope, certainly on behalf of all of us, we hope you're not about to forget us too very soon. Tonight's program was produced by John Hanlon with technical assistance from Heinz Gunnison and Heinz Strauch. Now, with the sign-off that will put us off the air forever, here is station manager Barclay McMillan.
Und jetzt das Ende. Zum letzten Mal schließen wir einen Sendetag bei Radio CAE. Wir hoffen, dass unsere Unterhaltung Ihnen gefallen hat. Wir unsererseits haben den Kontakt mit Ihnen sehr geschätzt. Und es ist uns eine Freude gewesen, in dieser Weise dienen zu können. Wir alle hier bei Radio CAE wünschen Ihnen eine gute Nacht, goodbye und alles Gute. Et maintenant, c'est la fin. Pour la dernière fois, nous terminons une journée de diffusion ici à Radio CAE. Nous espérons que vous avez trouvé utiles nos informations et que vous avez bien aimé notre programme de divertissement. Nous, de notre part, nous avons apprécié le contact avec vous et il a été un plaisir de pouvoir servir ainsi. Nous tous, ici à Radio CAE, vous souhaitons bonne nuit, au revoir et bonne chance. And now, it's the end. For the last time, we bring to a close a day of broadcasting from Radio Canadian Army Europe. We hope you found the information we brought useful and that you've enjoyed our entertainment. We, for our part, have enjoyed the contact with you. It's been a pleasure to serve in this way. From all of us at Radio CAE, good night, goodbye, best of luck.
I've been remembering when I first came to Werl in 1962 to be the program director at the Canadian radio station, wandering through the narrow streets, seeing the beautiful church spires and the flowers in the window boxes in the houses, thinking it was very romantic and enjoying it very much. But then as I stayed here, and I stayed here for 9 years and became the station manager, it was the people that I most remember. And those German people with whom we made contact at Radio CAE, both through the radio station and personally, and remembering the courage that we had to begin to see each other not just as the stereotype of Canadian or stereotype of German, but to see each other as real people, real flesh and blood people, just like ourselves. Jetzt, als ich durch die Werler Straßen wandere mit meinen Erinnerungen, ich fühle mich noch immer sehr jung.
We have good memories of this place because we were young and we were happy and we did a wonderful job here. But remember Radio CAE, how we were in the last days, you know. We just got better and better, you know. We were losing staff, we were losing... And you remember when Zweite Deutsches Fernsehen came and they said here, every day with a staff of 12, the impossible is made possible. Do you remember that?
That was it.
That was your... Now don't cry, Lou.
You know, or Hans Genau, he started that Internationaler Stammtisch. And that was really wonderful. And to find that some of the people in that International Stammtisch are still there and still remember those days is for me just a great joy.
Fine, great. Yeah. So let's have some more look around.
Yeah, I want to go and take a picture of my old room in the officers' quarters.
Where did the name Texas Heinz Gunnison come from?
You won't believe it. It was in a road show, happened at the Fort St. Louis Cinema. Marty Robbins, Kitty Wells, and I talked to Marty Robbins and asked him, I heard you this afternoon play the nice music, and now you play something fresh. Why is that, Marty? We are told to play music like that because we don't want to make the people homesick. So we must play something happy. All right, that's it. Then we talked about Western and all this and that. Well, I got a name. Texas Heinz Gunnison. I won't believe it, but I am. Well, it keeps on like that. Holy smoke.
Did you have any favorites among the country favorites?
Yeah, I remember the nice evening we had Hank Snow in a road show in CAE. And after a nice evening, it started beautiful. We had a few drinks, and then we had a little boom. I didn't know why, but I was told a show like that, without a little rough time, is no good. You must have a little fight.
Not to mention it. But in any case, there are a lot of pleasant memories that we can all remember and think about from Radio CAE days, that very special station. CFMH Campus Community Radio in St. John, and my name is Ted Wood.
Well, I'm Barclay Macmillan, an old friend of Ted Wood.
It is Christmas time of the year, at the time of gathering, friends getting together, and it's nice to see Barclay again. I had not seen this gentleman in 32 years since I came back from Germany, but there are some stories that we can tell, and first of all, as I say, we have our memories, and it is Christmas time, so let's start with you, Barclay, and talk about your impression of Germany and how it's all sort of carried on over the years.
Well, I've been remembering this year particularly my connection with Radio Canadian Army Europe, Radio CAE, where I was for 9 years during the 1960s. First of all, as program director, and then later on, I became station manager and was there until the station closed at the end of 1970. Those were wonderful, wonderful years, and I was back in Germany this summer and met some of the people with whom I had been associated in the German community. Because one of the things that we always wanted to do there, even though we were there exclusively to serve the Canadian community, but we had literally millions of German listeners, particularly teenagers. And they listened to us because we did in fact have lots and lots of country and Western music and rock and roll and so on, which was just not available on the German stations at that time. So we attracted several generations of German teenagers, and the work that we did there helped to shape their musical tastes. I was over there this summer. It was wonderful, the welcome that I got after being away for some 30 years. In some cases, people who had never met me, but who had been teenagers who listened to the radio station. They were just so pleased to make contact with someone who had such an intimate association with their favorite radio station.
There is one thing that before we go, there's a very special gentleman who is probably listening right at this moment over in Germany by the name of Eroc. And Barclay, you just tell the significance behind his bringing so many Germans and Canadians together after all these years, and I'm talking about 32 years, who has done a wonderful job.
Yes, it really is interesting the way things do turn out, because as I said earlier, one of the things we wanted to do was to build bridges between Canadians and German, break down stereotypes and so on. And we were, I think, to a great extent successful in doing that. And now there is one of those German teenagers who became a well-known German musician whose professional name is Eroc, and he has put together a wonderful, wonderful website on Radio CAE with many, many photographs and articles and so on about the station. And it's been so interesting that through that website, many of us here in Canada who have had an association with Radio CAE but who have never really kept in touch over the years, all of a sudden, we are coming together. For instance, I talked to Ed Melanson, who had worked at the radio station when I was there. In the late 60s, he was there, I believe. He was a signalman who was attached to us. And I have had no contact with him since then. But through the website, I was able to talk to him this morning. He's living in Kingston, Ontario. And so I'm very, very touched and heartened by what the efforts of Eroc and the other people on his Radio CAE research team, Manfred Schmidt of Dortmund, who had been one of those teenagers, and Helmut Euler, the photographer in Werl, and Robert Schad, who was on the staff of the city, who did liaison with Canadians. All these people have been involved in reviving Radio CAE and getting it on Eroc's website. And, you know, this bridge building is still going on, and one of the results of it has been, you know, not just bringing Germans and Canadians together, but bringing Canadians and Canadians together. Really great work. And I'm sure if Eroc is listening on the World Wide Web, I want to say to him, on behalf of all of us, Frohe Weihnachten.
Holiday Beat has come to you from the Canadian Forces radio station in Werl, Germany, home of the 4th Canadian Infantry Brigade Group. Next Monday, you'll hear from our colleagues at Lahr in southern Germany, when your Holiday Beat host will be Don McGibbon. Technical operations today were by Friedhelm Osterman. Now, this is Army announcer Corporal Cammy McKay, wishing you a good centennial summer and saying from Germany, Auf Wiedersehen.
Central European Time is 12 o'clock midnight. This concludes another evening of broadcasting on Canadian Forces Radio CAE. It's been the pleasure of Radio CAE to bring to you entertainment and news throughout the day and evening. Radio CAE is powered at 250 watts and broadcasts on an assigned frequency of 87.8 megacycles per second using frequency modulation. Our studios and transmitter are located at Fort Victoria in Werl, Westphalia, Germany. We return to the air in the morning at 0630 hours with bright music on Dawn Patrol, as hosted by Cammy McKay. This is Private Rick Odd speaking on behalf of all of us at the Brigade radio station and wishing you a very pleasant good night.